And then let me stream my screen for you guys. Then let me press slideshow. Then let me get my note cards out. All right. Well, let's begin. This is the player safety / DM orientation for the AD&DU. All of you who are at the seminar right now will be receiving the DM role at the end of this seminar. Any who's watching the VOD will get their role after they complete a Google form. So, what is player safety? Well, you're going to be at a table with 3, 4, 5 strangers, and not only strangers to you, but they're going to be strangers to each other. And everyone at the table will be thinking, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I ruin the vibes? And they'll all be too scared to say anything at all or to be themselves. Or, even worse, they have absolutely none of those thoughts and they make everyone uncomfortable all of the time. Either way, things will be really awkward or upsetting, and the way to avoid that kind of situation as the DM is with player safety. So once again, I ask, what is player safety? Player safety is knowing how to make sure everyone feels comfortable enough at the table to have fun, but not too comfortable to ruin the fun. The best way to achieve this result is by talking about it, making sure everyone's lines are clear from the start so no one is unsure if they would be crossing a line or not. Normally these kinds of things aren't talked about because friends already know these lines, and even still, session zeros are a standard place to talk about those things, but West Marches is mostly one-shots, which makes session zeros tedious and even redundant. So how can these lines be talked about without a bunch of extra work? Well, we put some of that on the players pre-session. This right here is the consent checklist. Every player and DM is required to go through and mark their sheet with the content they feel comfortable or uncomfortable with. When players sign up for one of your games, you can check their character page to see their version of the checklist, or if they don't have it on their character page, you can ask them to DM it to you. When the session starts, you're to look over the document for every player and yourself, and then just let everyone know what will and will not be acceptable during the game. Make sure that that is done completely anonymously, and put a halt to anyone who is actively trying to figure out who is opposed to what. You as a DM get the privilege to know who's comfortable with what topic, but you have to be free of judgment in that regard. Well, perfect. That was really easy. Now everyone knows what is and isn't cool, and doesn't have to feel like they're walking on eggshells. Of course, there will still be some awkwardness, but that's just because people are awkward. The question now becomes, what do you do if someone disregards the presented rules entirely? What if, despite the checklist, someone still makes others uncomfortable? If someone ignores the checklist or breaks the server rules, you first should use the teacher strategy. No one likes being embarrassed and told off in front of everyone, so what a teacher would do is ask a student to stay after class. What you should do is pull the player into a side channel and politely ask them to stop whatever it is that they're doing and go over the checklist and rules again with them really quickly. If that doesn't seem to work and they keep being disruptive, then maybe they need to be embarrassed. You should tell them then and there, I have already warned you once and reminded you of the rules once. If you keep doing this, you will be removed from the session. Don't let that be an empty threat either. If they do it again, tell them to leave. In the situation of a problem player who's arguing or refusing to leave, just ping a mod and we'll take care of it. The player will receive a 4-hour timeout just to make sure that they cannot rejoin your session at any point, after which we will hear both sides of the story to determine what kind of punishment would be fair, or maybe even find out if the DM was abusing their power. We do not take sides in that regard. Just because you are a DM does not mean we are going to favor you. If we find out you were the one who was being a problem, we will strip you of your role. What do you do then if there is no rule against something and it wasn't listed in the consent checklist, but people are uncomfortable anyway? Let me run through a situation I dealt with. I had a player whose backstory was that a fae had cursed him, and now he had horns, scale, fur, he was a monster. During the campaign, the party came across a coven of night hags. Although night hags aren't actually fae creatures, most hags are, and so he assumed as much. After they defeated the hags, the player was angry at fae in general, so he used his bite attack to tear them apart. Another character was not happy with this. The character's concept was that he was a big paragon of good. He would think he thought what kind of person would keep attacking dead bodies, and with the added bite attack, he just assumed that the other players were eating the corpse. At first, it looked like this sparked a good roleplay moment. Pretty quickly, it turned a little emotional, and the character who was a paragon of good, he turned to leave the party forever. I knew something was off, so I pulled that player into another channel. We talked about what was wrong. He was a bit of a macho man who, quote-unquote, could handle anything, so it took him a while for him to admit he was disturbed by the actions the other player took. What do you do in that situation? The answer may seem obvious, but honestly, these kinds of situations are often handled terribly. The rule is feelings take precedent over the game. I told the player that we would just rewind time and redo the scene, and I would give the other player a heads up about what happened. I was clear to let both of them know that there should be no hard feelings, as neither one of them knew it would be a problem. After I did that, we moved past it and everything was good. It seems like it is really easy to resolve both of these situations, doesn't it? Communication really is key, but the problem often arises from the fact that people do not know how to communicate. If you take the first step, though, the other party or parties tend to become more open and more willing to talk to you. But for any of this to work, they have to be comfortable with you. You have to be able to create a safe and comfortable environment at your table. You have to make sure at the start of the session, after you talk about the consent checklist, they know that your DMs are open if someone would like to privately talk about something that is making them uncomfortable. Make sure that they know that you will not judge them for anything they say, and make sure that they know you will validate their feelings. Now, some of you may recognize these, especially if you've ever run an Adventures League game. These are X cards, and the idea is that if an X is presented, then something is making you uncomfortable, and the game should shift gears. I bring these up because if you've used these before, you might just be thinking, well, this is a complicated process. What you're saying seems unnecessary. We could just use these instead, and they achieve the same goal. But I would like you to know why I do not like X cards and why they won't be used. The first reason is being anonymous. If you flip the card, everyone knows you're the one with the problem. In a lot of cases, people are less likely to bring something up because they don't want the other people at the table to perceive them differently. To try and counteract this, there's normally a rule where if someone flips a card, no one asks any questions and the game just changes gear. That brings me to my second problem: bullying. In my experience with Adventure League's games, where we used these cards, we've had players who misuse the cards to get their way. I had a player in particular who rushed into combat without support of her allies, and when she was losing, she flipped her card over. As the rules of the cards say, I had to let her get out of the combat and suffer more or less no consequences. She also stole from an ally, and when she was confronted about it, she flipped her card. The player in question refused to relent, and the store itself kicked him out and banned him for life because he was not respecting the cards. X cards are a black and white system. To make them work, you have to either have reliable players or have a lot of moderation that goes into them. We can't guarantee the former, and we don't see the point in the latter. We ask that you, the DM, be the shades of gray that the cards lack. Understand the situation and just handle it accordingly with empathy. That is player safety. It's nothing super complicated, but it is something very important. Next up, we'll discuss your job as a DM. DMs are naturally authority figures. You're in charge of your table and your scheduling. That does not mean you are a mod. Be mindful that your authority extends to your table and that is it. You are subject to the same rules as everyone else, and you can be banned just like everyone else. When making a posting for your game, this is the template you should follow. You will be posting in the channel called Game Posting, and you will be expected to update your posting often to reflect your current schedule. A lot of it is self-explanatory. Within the DM version of the lore doc, which you will find after you complete the seminar, you'll find a file called aratha.map. This is the file to the less pretty but more efficient and less taxing on your computer version of the world map. You'll be able to download the file. Then you go to Asgar's Fantasy Map Generator. There is a link to the website right next to where the file is listed. Once you're in Asgar's, you should see this menu on the left side of your screen. If not, you need to click on the arrow to open up the menu. At the bottom, you need to click on Load and then load the Aratha.map file. You can then zoom in and look at everything in more detail. You can also toggle the various layers in the menu to get more information about the world. As for the grid, each hex is 60 miles, as that ruler shows. What that means is that one hex is 2 days of travel at a normal pace, 1 day of travel if the party's moving at fast pace, and if the party's moving at slow pace, they can move a quarter of a hex. It's a big world with a lot of parts in it, many countries with many cities. It's going to be very difficult for one to keep track of it all. To be honest, it's impossible for one to keep track of every little detail. If we, the lore keepers, tried to fill up every single city in the world, that would take forever for us to do, and it would remove one of the arguably most important parts of the game: improv. Cities on a whole usually exist to fill a purpose, and the DMs often will adapt and change a city based on what that purpose is and what they want it to fill. Because of this, if we wrote out every single detail of every city, we would be restricting you and what you want to be able to do. Thus, you can create, or more so modify, the cities and towns in whatever way you would like, as long as it fits the world and the population. It fits in the world and the population stays the same. Once you have added something to a city, such as an NPC, a shop, a building, whatever, send it to the lore keepers so that they can add it to the official lore. Through this method, we will be creating and fleshing out this world together. Within the DM channel, you will find DM help. If you have any questions regarding lore, in regards to spoilers, so it wouldn't fit in the lore questions channel, or you have any questions about how Asgard's works or anything else really, just go to this channel. In regards to the living campaigns, there are some requirements for you to be allowed to lead a living campaign. You have to have DM'd at least 2 sessions of West Marches, then you have to submit a plot to the lore keepers and have it approved. If you already have players who are interested in a living campaign with you, and your plan is just to kind of let them do whatever they want and let them lead the campaign, then you'll need to let the lore keepers know so that they can work out something to keep you and your party out of important areas to the world plot, specifically in regards to spoiler areas to phases that have yet to begin. Try and keep your campaigns simple. Initially, you should keep your plot to being about a couple levels long. From there, the party can decide if they want to do another campaign with you, or if they want to move on to another DM. In addition, this also gives time for members of the party to switch out if a player has to drop. Finally, thank you. Thank you from myself, thank you from AZ, from Toxic T, Pengy, Stego, all of us in the entirety of the AD&DU. This would not be possible at all without dungeon masters like you who are willing to put in the effort. Last bit we're just going to run through is if anyone has any questions as to exactly what their role is as a DM or anything else at all about anything that went over in this session, now is the time to ask. And give me just a second before you ask questions. All right. Go ahead. You can be a player in West Marches and a DM in a living campaign if you would like. Third-party content is not allowed. As for DMs itself, the lore keepers will be releasing some homebrew content, which you'll be able to read about in the lore doc, but full third-party is just, at the moment, not allowed, but you can take monsters and something from any rulebook at all. Yes, if a player wants them to be, or is fine with them being visible, then they're visible right now in the player's channel. That's okay, but if a player is uncomfortable with that idea and does not want them to be visible, then they'll just DM it to you directly. Yeah, you can be a DM for West Marches and a player for West Marches. We're going to be very careful about releasing what information we release, just so we don't spoil any DMs who are also players. So you're not going to have the full picture of everything at first. In fact, you're going to see things very short term, short periods at a time. What if, especially if you make a NPC who is super important to the lore. But yeah, if you make a stupid character like Nicholas Dickless, send him on over. I suppose if there's a situation where you are a player whose actions cause the campaign, then you could DM it. That would be very interesting. I would have to, I guess, as a lord, the low would have to review the specifics of that situation to approve or disapprove it. I can't necessarily imagine immediately how that would come to be. I personally haven't run a West Marches myself, but have one run shots. Just to be clear, when you make a posting player character level locked to their character themselves, right? Yeah, I can't comprehend that. So starting out, you couldn't make a third level one shot. Oh yes, I see now. So correct. You should make one shots, the levels of one shots based on what the level of the uh, players currently are, and in addition, we have a bunch of pre-made quests and things like that, postings on the notice board inside of Quantasham. So when sessions begin, parties can easily just say, we want to do this quest, then you just run that quest. But yeah, you should make sure that whatever your session is, it should be close to the ability of whatever level your players are. When this campaign gets up to those high levels, I'm sure things are going to be crazy. As for what rewards to add, we have guidelines you'll be able to look over, such as we have caps and limits on how much XP and gold you can award per session, based on what level the average party level of the party. So we have guidelines you'll be able to read about what rewards to add. As for getting a party together, inside of game posting, you just post your schedule, and then players will apply and say, I want to sign up for this day. Can the living campaign DMs cook and potentially allow direct party interaction, like two different parties interacting? And not only is that allowed, but that is actively encouraged. So guidelines on challenge for the players. In fact, I have some random encounter tables. So when a party is traveling, you know, a day's worth of traveling, they have a few chances to roll a random encounter. Some of those encounters are challenge rating 5. A party of level 1s will die if they try to fight that. So you are fine to make some very difficult battles, but as a DM, you should make sure that you give them an out. Give them a way to just slip past without having to fight it. Because, again, a party of level 1s will die to a challenge rating 5. Yes, West Marches are basically one shots, and yes, you are able to run on the spot games. It's just if you have to get players for the on the spot game. Yes, no Tarask. Bad idea. I would say so. Long travel will be a heavy aspect. Real quick, let me go back to this page. Like I said, 60 miles per hex. You can see that Quantasham, the next closest city, is about 3 days travel away. Oh, whoopsie. Oh yeah, so real quick, time within sessions. Uh, one, not yet. The downtime doc isn't done yet. So as for time within sessions, 1 week or one session can contain up to 1 week's worth of content, but that's more so driven by the players. If the players want to take the full week to do something within your session, then give them a week's worth of stuff, or you know what I mean. give them about a week's worth. After it's done, if your players only took 3 days in that session and the session ends, you should reply or send. We'll have a sheet for this, but you should let us know how many days were left from the week. So if it took 3 days that session, then let us know that these players have 4 days left in the week, if that makes sense. I hope that wasn't super confusing. Yeah, travel is kind of an important feature. Traveling and exploration are usually the big thing in West March's campaigns. So you are free as a DM to not only just use the encounter table, but use it as inspiration. Oh, there's a wormling here, a dragon wormling here. Maybe it won't just be they fight the wormling, but now there's an interest of like, oh, why is there a wormling here? For an example. But the big draw to West Marches usually is exploration. Yes, the players have 7 days in game for every week. So a real life week, they are allowed to do 7 days worth of in game stuff. And that resets every Sunday. If it's like, 1 day over and it was unintentional, something like that, then it's fine. But a player shouldn't be actively trying to do, get 5 or get 2 weeks out of their 1 week. And West Marchers are separate from the canon of the Living campaigns. No, all of it takes place in the same world. What's going on with the one-shots in the West Marchers campaign is also affecting the Living campaigns and vice versa. Yeah, we're not going to do the extended rest periods. It's still going to be if you rest for 1 hour, you can take a short rest. If you rest for 8 hours, you can take a long rest. We're not going too in detail. We're not writing out strict outlined rules for any cooldown time. Players are allowed to attend as many sessions in a week as they want. But if we do notice players abusing that and, just, I guess I should say abusing, but players who have a lot of free time are joining a session every day and they're suddenly level 5 while everyone else is still level 2, we're going to start putting some restrictions on it. At the moment, though, we're not expecting it to be a problem, so we're just leaving it for now. Should DMs jump around the world, or do you think DMs will end up focusing on certain regions? I think that DMs will naturally fall into. I think they're allowed to jump around the world as much as they want, but I think DMs will naturally end up focusing on certain regions just by playing. They'll find a region they like and they'll stick to it. But if there's a DM who just loves the world on the entirety and wants to jump around all the time, they're free to do so. We had never talked about any of this stuff being streamed. What I was planning on doing is every week having either every week or every other week having a newspaper come out for just so people can read up what the recent events of the living campaigns and West Marches are, how the world is changing, things like that. Um, if you can, I will say, Mike's, if you want to just like kind of put a disclaimer in your game posting saying I'm going to be streaming all of my games so that your players are aware of that before they sign up, I'd say you're perfectly allowed to. If you play a lot more than other players, maybe you need a second character. Yeah, I think that's fine. If we haven't said anything about not allowing people with a second character, that'll probably be fine. Uh, what we're going to be doing is we're going to have a shared drive for all of the important maps and stuff when they come up. Uh, so for whether or not there's a specific mapping tool to use, we've been exclusively so far talking about using Roll20 for it. Uh, for the ease of the players, it might be best if you just stick to doing Roll20 maps because the players already have their Roll20 account. They already know that they're supposed to use it. That being said, If you put a disclaimer and say download Foundry, I think that would be okay. Disclaimer in your game posting specifically. If you want to go mapless, that's fine. If you prefer Theater of the Mind or if you like Theater of the Mind, I think that's okay. But once again, you should just kind of let people know this is going to be Theater of the Mind. All right, see you, Ink. Have a good one. Oh, before you leave, let me just quickly add your DM role. There you go. Red name. You do not need to run. You are not required to run West Marches on the Western continent. That being said, you will probably be running. You will often be running them out of Quantasham because that's the starting city where people will kind of want to stick around if they're doing West Marches. But if there are players and parties who extend across the world and they still just want to do West Marches, but in other parts of the world, you are completely empowered to do so. You're all about to have red drip, and it is drippy as hell. Expecting some big questions from these typing periods. Yeah, I mean, you're not required to, sub to Roll20 for the lighting or anything like that. If you want to use the free version, that it still works pretty well. I used the free version for years before I finally got premium. And the only reason I even got premium is because I started doing professional dungeon mastering, so I just felt like I should increase my quality of play for the people who pay me to be their DM. Are there any other questions? Seems like questions have died down quite a bit. If I wanted to generate a trade company, say the West Marches Trade Company, that controls trade between the continents, what would be the way to get that approved? Not certain if I fully understand the question, but if what I would recommend for the general concept is try your best to just use what factions and countries and companies are already present in the world. If there's something just doesn't work for what you want to do, you can contact the lore masters and we'll see what we can work out. Which once you guys also all have access to the DM role, there will be a private channel called Lore Masters Layer, and I'll whenever I have free time, I'll just be hanging out in there for any other questions and such. No, in general, how does a DM get quest ideas approved for the world? Oh, um, looking at it now, we forgot to make the channel, but there will be a channel for it, a specific channel where you just submit your ideas into. On a scale of 1 being silliest and 10 being seriousest, what are we shooting for? Um, I think there isn't really a single number. I think, having a 10 and having a 1 is both fine. I think it's just honestly mostly entirely up to the players what they enjoy. That being said, uh, with the phases, what the world is going to adapt and what the lore keepers content is making, I would say the scale that we are doing is probably the story itself is probably a 10. Like, it's a pretty serious story. There's not a whole lot of silliness to it. Would you agree to that, Pengi? Yeah, not really a silly story. The story we're making is a 10. The players always bring the silly. Are there any overarching homebrew rules across the board for the game? Things like privately rolling death saves, flanking, etc. I think we just decided that we're going to stick to rules as written. Mechanically, the tone will be consistent, right? Like if I wanted to do cold damage when you're in the mountains and not just right, but someone else didn't do that, I can't do that. Yeah, yeah, it's going to be consistent. The mechanics should be consistent across the board. If it's not a rule written in the uh, in any of the Dungeon Master's Guide or anything like that, just assume we're not using that rule. There may be some exceptions to that. We may decide later on, oh, we want to use these homebrew rules. Then we will release that and ping all of the DMs and let everyone know that. I will say I'm currently working on it, but there will be some homebrew rules for downtime, such as alchemy in your downtime, crafting in your downtime, etc. I will be releasing those when I have them done. Yeah, also it happens. If you're wrong, you're wrong. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Just you know, later on, try to remember next time. But again, it's not a big deal. That's why in the server rules it says that you're allowed to remind a DM of the rules once, because DMs aren't perfect. If one remembers wrong, the other doesn't. Oh well. Yeah. Results of specific rules will be posted in the Supreme Court. Diver, you can't leak the plot like that. All right, are there any other questions? And of course, if you forget anything, this is gonna be a VOD. This entire session is gonna be posted, and you guys will be able just to review things. All right, awesome. I'll start giving people the Dungeon Master role then. Dungeon Master. You two already have the Dungeon Master role. Stupid mods having the role preemptively. There's only a form if you were um, watching the VOD and to get your DM role. Otherwise, there is no form for you to fill out because you guys all attended in person. Should I make DM role a separate section in what players are online? Yeah, we can if we want to. You were in fact here. All right, I'm ending the VOD now.